So we'll start the kind of informal conference. Everybody got a copy of this paper? You've got French on the right, Spanish on the left, and English in the middle. The Silence of the Shepherds, but not all of them, it's called. So this is a paper that Father Ruiz and I worked on some very important points in this stage of the battle for the Holy Catholic faith and tradition and for the survival, Operation Survival. So help yourself to more food, help yourself to coffee and tea. It's not that formal, but we'll just cover some of these main points. Okay, Father? All right, so if you look at the paper, The Silence of the Shepherds, but not all of them. It is necessary to clarify the doctrinal and prudential truths in this hour of diabolical disorientation, in order to guide Catholics, especially those who claim to defend tradition. So, first part, the visibility of the Church is linked to the profession of the faith. Number one, the integral and public profession of the faith is necessary for the visibility of the Church, indeed for the very existence of the Church. So with many bishops today going silent, even traditional bishops, you never hear from them, they have no letters, they have no catechism, no sermon. The sheep are lost. There's no one to guide. But it's a duty, especially of bishops, to preach the faith, and of course the priests. Number two, there will always be those among the clergy and the faithful who profess the integrity of the faith, that is, the whole doctrine of the faith of the Church, because the integrity of the faith is one of its most essential elements, and because the Catholic Church cannot be destroyed. By integrity of the faith means the whole entire faith, no picking and choosing. If the Catholic faith is not integral, it is no longer the Catholic faith. And if there were no longer anyone who professed all the truths of the Catholic faith, the Church would have already been destroyed. So that means, for example, none of us can claim we're Catholic and still, for example, still believe in separation of church and state. You just can't be a Catholic and hold that position. If one does, he's a liberal Catholic. So, number three on the top of page 2. The visible profession of the faith is above all the mission of the teaching church, Ecclesia Docens, and this above all by defending all those truths that are currently being questioned. But even so, it is not enough that pastors teach the truth, but it is necessary that they also denounce and condemn the contrary error. So it's a duty, as the Society of St. Pius X before 2012, and Archbishop Lefebvre himself, you can hardly find a sermon or a conference of Archbishop Lefebvre that does not mention the modern errors and Vatican II in the new Mass, or the new Code, or the new sacraments.
There is in all the councils of the Church, always in the end are the anathemas, you know. It's, the council propose the doctrine of the Church, but always in all the councils of the Church are in the end the condemnation of the contrary errors.
Can you hear that? So the councils, all the councils, the 20 councils of the Church, they always come out and anathematize the errors. They condemn the errors, and a whole list of them. So in other words, they point out the wolves, and they say, stay away from these wolves. That's Mother Church. But so, okay. Number 4, today the Church is eclipsed by the absence of teaching from the majority of pastors. We live in the age of faint-hearted, mute, ambiguous, and cowardly pastors. Just as the apostles abandoned and denied Jesus Christ during his passion, so today the pastors deny the Church and abandoned it during his passion. So yes, the worst is the silence of the traditional bishops, because they're more responsible, because we were all formed by Archbishop Lefebvre to attack heresy and error. And when we, traditional priests, especially of the SSPX, grow silent, it is a crime, because we were taught to fight modernism. We were taught to be opposed to modernism and to warn the flock.
Here in the many priests makes only spiritual homilies and not speak about the errors of the modern world, of the new church, and that is not the spirit of the church. The church always condemn the error, contrary errors.
Everybody hear that back there? So the church, the priests in the church has always condemned error and heresy. So it's wrong when a priest or a bishop will only preach spiritual sermons, so-called. Spiritual sermons that have no practical attack against error. It's an error of liberalism, actually. So that's all right. Number 5, the visibility of the church requires in its members, first of all, a public profession of the faith. That is to say, visible. It is not enough to have only the name of Catholic. The church is not a private or secret society. So that's why it's a bit frustrating for us traditional Catholics to see the silence of so many traditional bishops, and especially ones from Archbishop Lefebvre's line, which they all know better. And so I've personally asked bishops in Deos, please put out sermons, please put out a catechism. And if you don't want to use internet, at least use a letter, like Archbishop Lefebvre did. Please use a letter and teach the faith. But so far, silence. So that's an example. Okay?
Yes.
Where are the marks of the Catholic Church today? The Catholic Church cannot in itself be in crisis, since it is one, holy, Catholic, and apostolic. The crisis of the Church is above all the crisis of those sick members who are the bad Christians. And today, unfortunately, it comprises a greater part of the clergy. But this is not necessarily the case for all, since the Catholic Church has from Jesus Christ the promise of indefectibility. That means can never teach error. And there will always be those who represent it in all its marks, but it is not absolutely necessary that they be in great numbers. So remember the words of St. Athanasius, even if Catholics faithful to tradition are reduced to a handful, they still remain the true Church of Jesus Christ. So that's what this point is basically saying. Where is the true Catholic Church? In those holding the faith of all time.
It's not the church is not the exterior things of the church, like the constructions, but the church are the pastors, the shepherds, and the faithful, and that is the church, and other things are accidental. You know, the church, we are the persons. The persons are, we are the church.
Everybody got that? So the Catholic Church is not necessarily in the buildings and in the constructions of exterior churches, but in the priests, bishops, and faithful maintaining the faith. So the buildings, like St. Athanasius used to say, they have the churches, the modernists, the Arian heretics. They have the churches, we have the faith. And it's been that way now since the council. They have all our beautiful churches that were built for the Tridentine Mass, but we have the faith, meaning we have if we have Mass in hotels, living rooms, barns, garages, in the woods, that's where the faith is, if it's in line with all of traditions. See? All right, number 2 on page 3. The unity of the church is first of all in the unity of the faith. So that's something Archbishop Lefebvre always said. That is in doctrinal unity. The unity of government is at the service of the unity of the faith and not the contrary. So the duty of the Pope, bishops, priests is to pass the faith and not change it. But if they don't pass the faith, they're not doing their duty. So they're abusing their authority. 3, there can be no authentic holiness where there is no integrity of the faith. The so-called saints who err on faith are false saints and impostors. So that's why, for example, Pope Paul VI is definitely no saint. Father was telling me the other night when Pope Paul VI was dying, the guards would, in the night when he died and his body was being held in state, the guards would hear howling and screaming from his body. Not a good sign. Not a good sign. So, see? Okay, anything on this, Father? The holiness?
Yes, because there are many new signs, and we can question that, but there is more explanation after.
Okay, here we go. Number 4, the Catholicity of the Church lies in her ability to communicate to all people the truths of the faith of which she is the exclusive depository. Conciliar ecumenism does not represent the Catholicity of the Church because it opposes the spreading of the whole truth of the Church of Christ. So ecumenism is a lie. It only seeks to be, let's unite with other religions on the common denominators. So we accept the Bible, we accept Jesus Christ, but avoid the topics that cause division, such as the Holy Eucharist, sacrifice of the Mass, separation of church and state, the primacy of Peter. So that's a false ecumenism that Archbishop Lefebvre constantly condemned. See?
Yes, it's in all the marks of the church are always the faith is the more important in all the 4 marks of the church. Always is the faith is in the relation of the faith, the 4 marks.
Okay, number 5 on the bottom of page 3. Our adherence to the apostolicity of the church is made possible in the first place by the bond that we have with the apostles. But this is mainly realized through the faith that they preached and that has been transmitted from generation to generation until our days. This heritage is also called the tradition of the church. It is the teaching, the stable expression, not evolutionary, meaning always changing, not evolutionary, of all the essential elements of the Catholic Church, which is the work of Jesus Christ. Top of page 4. That is why the Catholic Church is essentially and in itself tradition. So from the Most Holy Trinity to Christ and God who revealed to the prophets all down the centuries, till Christ, God became man and set up his church, until the death of St. John, that is all public revelation, what we must believe. And that must be handed down and not changed. See? All right, the next section, differences between the Catholic Church and the Conciliar Church. Now, Bishop Follet and now the leaders of the new SSPX, they never anymore speak of the Conciliar Church. They never make this distinction anymore. So that's very deadly. Number 1, the Conciliar Church that came into existence during the Second Vatican Council is not the Catholic Church. The Conciliar Church is a counterfeit of the Catholic Church. The Conciliar Church is something new, a new church. The Conciliar Church is not the visible church of Christ. The Conciliar Church is a sect. Pope Francis is at the same time the head of 2 churches, of the Catholic Church and of the Conciliar Church. It is in this that the great deception, the abomination of desolation of the holy place consists. The conciliar church is gradually eclipsing the true Catholic Church with the ultimate goal of replacing it absolutely. So Pope Francis just put in charge of the synod 3 bishops. One of them is Cardinal Supich of Chicago, who are all pro-rainbow. It's a scandal, a terrible scandal. But that's an example. They're trying to destroy the Catholic Church from within. See?
Yes, and always Bishop Lefebvre speak about that in his conference, that he explained that the conciliar church is a counterfeit. What do you say? Counterfeit of the true church. He said that explicitly in one conference spiritual of Econ.
Yes, like counterfeit money. It's just a lie, a fiction, but it looks similar. And now they've got, conciliar incorrupt bodies like John the 23rd, which is not really incorrupt. They've got conciliar Eucharistic miracles, which have been found to be frauds, numerous ones. They have conciliar saints, Paul VI, John the 23rd, who are not saints. What else have they got? The new mysteries of the Rosary, the luminous mysteries. So everything has been adapted to appear Catholic, but it's not. See? Yeah. Number 2, we cannot accept sedevacantism as a solution to the crisis of the Church, because denying that all the last popes are popes takes away from the Church even the very hope of finding a solution and an end to this tremendous crisis. We do not have the authority to canonically judge these popes. Only a truly Catholic pope in the future will have the authority to do it. So this is a position Archbishop Lefebvre always held, that, Caiaphas was the Old Testament pope, and he was wicked, and he rejected the Messiah right in front of his face. But we see how Christ respected his authority and answered him truthfully. Same with Pontius Pilate. So you can have bad popes, just like we can have bad presidents.
Yes.
See?
See.
We're here. Okay.
Yes.
Number 3, in the order of virtues, faith is prior to obedience. Faith is greater than obedience. Authority is at the service of faith, and not the other way around. The full profession of the Catholic faith is more important than being in harmony with the authorities who are destroying the Church. At the present time, the members of the Conciliar Church have illegitimately taken possession of the highest offices of the Catholic Church, that is to say, of its structure. It is necessary to keep in mind that in some cases it is licit to disobey men in order to obey God. To distance oneself from the structure is not in itself a systematic act, but simply a greater act of prudence.
And Paul says, you remember when he asked to Bishop Lefebvre to be obeisant, and he insists always obeisance.
Well, when Pope Paul VI said to Archbishop Lefebvre, you got to obey.
But not justify that. That he don't justify doctrinal of the Bishop Lefebvre justify his position with the faith. But Paul, the Pope, not only obeisance, obey. Yes.
Yeah, everybody got that? So Pope Paul VI, all he had to back himself was authority. You must obey. Archbishop Lefebvre was able to stand on all of tradition and give reasons for the defense of the faith. And that's why he did tell Pope Paul VI, either I obey you and disobey all your predecessors, or obey all your predecessors and disobey you. And I choose to disobey you because you step out of line with all the previous popes.
And now in the society are the same phenomenon. The superiors only want to be obeyed, but not justify his position. And that's why there are the letter of 3 bishops to Bishop Fele, and he's only one. He don't answer the good reasons of the 3 bishops.
Yes, everybody kind of catch that? So now the new SSPX is doing this now also. They're emphasizing more and more obedience. You have to obey, you have to obey. And when the 3 bishops in 2012 wrote to Bishop Fillet, he didn't give any answers for his new position, his new orientation with modernist Rome, but he insisted on obedience. Just obey because he's the authority, without the reasons behind it. Is that clear? Is everyone following back there? Can you hear us okay? Okay, next section, number 5 in the middle, page 5 in the middle. The poison fruits of the conciliar church. 1. All the conciliar documents and all the post-conciliar magisterium are not, nor can they be, a doctrinal reference for Catholics. We must reject as a whole all the texts of the Second Vatican Council together with all its reforms. So that's basically repeating Archbishop Lefebvre's 1974 declaration.
This practice of Bishop Lefebvre always, he never, in his homilies, in his circumference, never make citations of the Council, never citations about the Pope, of the Pope, etc. The documents conciliar, never.
Oh, that's true. Father said Archbishop Lefebvre never ever quoted in any sermon or conference, he never quoted Vatican II. Never. But here we got a lot of conservative bishops like Cardinal Burke, Pope Benedict XVI, and Bishop Schneider. They always quote Vatican II. And they quote Pope John Paul II also. But Archbishop Lefebvre, he saw the conciliar poison permeated all the documents of Vatican II. Like a cake that's soaked in poison. It permeates the whole cake. Okay, and number 2, pastors and others who cite conciliar and post-conciliar texts as criteria of authority are fostering confusion and disorientation among the faithful. The people are not sufficiently educated to distinguish what is in conformity with the traditional magisterium from what is not. In addition, all the conciliar texts are so imbued with the new spirit that it is practically impossible to free them from it, nor from their context, which is formed by the other conciliar documents. So in other words, it causes confusion for any bishops or priests to quote Vatican II in a good light, for example. It just causes confusion, and it's best to avoid it. See?
Yes.
Number 3 on page 6. The new Mass is the direct fruit of the Second Vatican Council. It was created for ecumenical motives and to please Protestants. That is why it is seriously contaminated with Protestant elements and is therefore poisoned. It was not legitimately promulgated, nor can it be considered a Catholic rite. It is so vitiated that it can be said to be evil in itself and intrinsically so. So malum ex quocumque defectu. Something is evil from a defect. So it's normal for a man to have 2 eyes, but if he doesn't have an eye, that's a defect. That's a certain evil. It's normal that the Catholic Mass express the Catholic faith, but if it's missing the offertory, like the new Mass does, waters down and changes everything to please Protestants, it becomes evil. Evil out of a defect that's due to it. Something that's due to it.
And this is the position too of the Bishop Lefebvre, that he say is not legitimately promulgated. That he said that, Bishop.
Yes.
Lefebvre. And the declaration of the 2012
12, yeah.
say the contrary things, huh? Exactly the contrary, that he say are legitimate promulgates.
Yes.
Is very clear the contradiction.
Everybody hear that? So Archbishop Lefebvre, he always insisted the new Mass and the new sacraments are not legitimate. They are not legitimately promulgated, meaning they're bad for souls. But the new SSPX in 2012 declared publicly that they are legitimately promulgated, which contradicts Archbishop Lefebvre's position like black and white. And yet everybody sleeps. Nobody has any reaction. And the society priests that I've talked to, they defended it saying, well, it only means that the Pope approves it. It only means this, it means that. But the words are there in black and white. And 100 years from now, people will read the Doctrinal Declaration, and the Pope then will condemn it as a modernist document. Because it legitimately promulgated means that it's good for souls. So it's not. Okay, 4. Since the new Mass is an intrinsically evil rite, Catholics should not participate in it, not only because it offends our faith, but also because it is an attack against it, since in the long run the new Mass makes those who participate in it acquire a Protestant spirit. Consequently, attendance at the new Mass is immoral, and therefore it is unlawful to positively advise anyone to participate in it. Neither is it licit to receive the hosts that have been consecrated there, because communion, being the direct fruit of the new Mass, is the most perfect form of participation in this Mass. So Archbishop Lefebvre, open brackets, Archbishop Lefebvre always made the distinction, if you have a funeral or a wedding of a family member and you're invited to go to the new Mass, you may go, but passively. We can't participate in it. You just pray the rosary in the back. We cannot actively participate. But one can passively go just because it's, your relative that the funeral is for. So that would not be sinful. But to actively participate in it would be sinful. See? Number 5, all the new sacraments of the new conciliar church are objectively doubtful, because we can no longer be sure of the intentions of their ministers, and also of the new Mass and of the Eucharist. So we see that in the new SSPX, they have a handful of priests who came right from the Novus Ordo, or St. Peter's, and they're not conditionally reordaining them since 2006. So there's a doubt on those Masses. Objectively speaking, there's a doubt. See?
That is in the homily of the consecrations, episcopal consecrations of Bishop Lefebvre. He said that clearly, very clearly in the homily. He said all the sacraments of the new church are doubtful. And he said that clearly. And now it's a new position in the society.
Yes.
And I understand that in other times, all the priests in the society some people are baptized in the new church, always come to the society with the priest make the complement of baptism, complements, how you say, the exorcism.
Supply the ceremonies.
Supplied the ceremonies.
Yes.
He always make, and now no more.
And conditionally baptized?
Sometimes when are the special reasons to have the adult,
yes,
there are the conditional baptized. But there are always the complements. In Spanish is complemento, in English is
supply the ceremonies.
Supplied, and now no more. I understand the faithful of the society say me that no more make that. Only they are baptized. He take like that. All the people and not make the supplement.
So people baptized in the new rite, in the new Mass, the new sacrament, we, the society priests, always used to conditionally baptize them or at least supply the ceremonies, that is, the salt, the exorcisms, the anointings that the novice ordo dropped, especially the exorcisms. So Father was saying that now the new SSPX, they don't do that anymore. But it's very dangerous because remember, like, what was it, 2 years ago, 2 priests in the United States, novice order priests, they saw the video of their baptism and they realized it wasn't valid. So they sent the video to Rome, modernist Rome of all things, and even modernist Rome said they were invalid baptisms. They had to be reordained, reconfirmed, re-baptized. Of course, it was all novice ordo still, so back to square one. But that's the point. The new Mass baptisms can be invalid now.
There is a photography of John Paul II, that he make a baptism of a lady adult, and when there is very clear because he give the water, and the water only touch the hair, not touch the skin.
The skin.
And I am learned in the seminary of Hewko that this invalid. A baptism that not touch the skin is invalid, and the Pope don't know how to make the baptism. The Pope.
So Pope John Paul II did a baptism where he said he poured the water, but it only touched the hair and fell off the hair, but didn't touch the skin. If it doesn't touch the skin, it's not a valid baptism. That's why it's always poured over the forehead. Yes, so Father just said the Pope John Paul II didn't know how to baptize. He was trained in modernism. Okay. Number 5 on page 6. All the new sacraments. Oh, no, we're on number 6. So, miracles are the credential that God gives to His church as proof of His divinity. The new Mass cannot be the object of divine approval by means of miracles. In the conciliar church today, there are so many abuses and anomalies that the testimony of the conciliar clergy on alleged so-called miracles can definitely not be taken as a guarantee. So we cannot trust these new Mass miracles in the bishops that promote them. And it's sad to say Bishop Williamson has been promoting them heavily for now over 10 years. So what does that do to the faith and the faithful? So it just raises more confusion. So how can God back error and a Mass that offends Him? How can He back that with miracles? And some of these miracles have already been found to be false.
And in the new canonizations, how many miracles are necessary, in the new exigence to make a canonization with the new rites is 2 miracles.
Anybody know how many miracles are required for the new canonizations of the new saints?
2.
2 miracles.
But it's not possible that God can make a miracle to approve the canonization of Paul VI.
God can't make a miracle to back the canonization of someone like Pope Paul VI.
And the conclusion is that these miracles are fake. It's not serious. It's not
fake miracles.
It's not possible. There is no other possibility because God can't approve this a person that we know that is not a saint. This Pope Paul VI.
Yeah, God cannot give miracles to back someone we know who's not a saint. Pope Paul VI, who destroyed the Mass and the sacraments. So, okay. All right, and that's the next point here. 7, the process used today in the canonization of the new saints has been profoundly modified by the new church, which is why there is a doubt about all the new canonizations, because of a defect of form about their regularity and their validity. The conciliar popes, being modernists, no longer intend to do anything absolute and definitive, since modernism is evolutionist. Modernism is evolutionary. So that's a very good point, that the modernist popes don't believe in something fixed and absolute. So their canonizations can't be all that reliable.
Can be infallible.
Cannot be infallible too, yeah. Okay, if anyone ever has questions, just raise your hand, no problem. Next point, is collaboration with the conciliar church legitimate and moral? 1, page 7. In the present state of affairs in the church, one cannot collaborate with the pastors who consciously are destroying the church, because there is also a very grave danger of being absorbed by the conciliar church. It is a great illusion to believe that the problems of the church can be corrected from within, since it is a hierarchical society and it is impossible to profess the whole of the traditional faith within its structure, especially when those who today occupy the highest positions are determined to continue the reforms of the Second Vatican Council. This is the illusion of the Ecclesia Dei congregations, of other similar indult congregations, and recently the neo-SSPX. Archbishop Lefebvre used to say, the superiors form the inferiors. The authorities over you will have a huge effect on you. And that's why he said we don't put ourselves under modernist Rome, because they will pressure us into compromise. To quote Pope Benedict XVI, he said, we will get these traditional communities to slowly abandon their rigid positions and accept the council and the new Mass. And that's happened to La Barue, Campos, St. John Vianney, Good Shepherd Institute, the Oasis, Redemptorists. Who else? Now the new SSPX, sad to say. Sad to say. Okay. Number 2, on page 8. For the parishioners, there is also the grave danger of being absorbed by the new conciliar church through these accordist, that is, coming under modernist Rome, congregations. Since being subjected to the conciliar Rome, they cannot openly criticize the errors of the Second Vatican Council. In other words, they're duct-taped. Nor those of the modernist hierarchy, and end up being gradually absorbed by the new church. The faithful of the tradition should not frequent these congregations, since it is not only about the Mass and the sacraments, but also about the fact of frequenting an environment with the whole pastoral care that goes with them. Not to heed this warning is to expose oneself to the grave danger of being disoriented and gradually assimilated by the conciliar church. It is better not to attend any of these Masses or to frequent any of these environments, and to wait until one finds a truly traditional priest who is not compromised by the accordism of the conciliar church. So this is just repeating what all the old priests during the French Revolution used to tell the people. Don't go to those Masses said by the priests who took the oath, the oath of fidelity to the French Revolution. And same in England. Don't go with priests who accepted the schismatic Anglican Church. So now we have to say the same. Don't go with priests who in any way conform to Vatican II or the new Mass. And Archbishop Lefebvre used to say that all the time.
There is a letter that the faithful of Canada, you know this letter? The faithful of Canada write to Bishop Lefebvre to ask if it's possible to go this Mass of this congregation of Ecclesia Dei. This response are not. It's better to say in your home, your rosary, but never go there.
Yeah, everybody got that? So people in Canada wrote Archbishop Lefebvre, can we attend the indult mass in Canada or the St. Peter's groups? And he wrote back and said, no, it's better to stay home, read the missal, sanctify the Lord's Day, pray in the rosary, etc., and not put your faith in danger with these groups who make an accord with modernist Rome.
And now the society SSPX is in similar situation of the congregation Ecclesia Dei. It's the same position now.
Yeah, the new SSPX is exactly now in the same position as Ecclesia Dei. And I know in many cases where the society priests have told the faithful, go to the indult mass, go to St. Peter's Mass, go to these compromised masses. I know numerous cases where the priests actually positively encourage them to do that, which Archbishop Lefebvre said, never, it's too dangerous. Number 3, on page 8 on the bottom, it is necessary to distance oneself from those priests who only speak of so-called spiritual themes and who no longer criticize modern errors, nor the errors of the Second Vatican Council, nor the ambiguity of the Ecclesia Dei and the Neo-SSPX congregations. The tenacious omission of certain points and themes of capital importance can sometimes be a sign of complicity. The truth is either taken in its entirety or it is no longer the truth. Or it is defended in its entirety or one is no longer a true defender of it. So that's pretty powerful. So, and that is one of the effects of liberalism, is to stop condemning errors and just talk about spiritual, puffy things. I don't mean in any way to disparage that either, because sometimes the priest has to just talk about a saint's life or virtues, which is fine. But if it's all they do, to the exclusion of condemning error in Vatican II and the New Mass, that's a liberal error, actually. Not to condemn error. It's a liberal idea. Right? Right,
Yes,
Father?
Yes. It's true.
Anything else on that point, Father?
No, I think it's sufficiently clear.
Okay. Number 4, page 9. The Society of St. Pius X was founded by Archbishop Marcel Lefebvre after the Second Vatican Council to save the tradition of the conciliar tidal wave. To save the tradition in the face of the conciliar tidal wave, to preserve the integrity of the faith and to combat the errors that threaten the Catholic Church. It is for the same reason that he distanced himself from the conciliar hierarchy in order to make possible the preservation and defense of the Catholic faith. So remember, he did say that being excommunicated by modernist Rome in 1988, he said it was actually a blessing. He said it was a badge of honor, and he said it makes it clear that we are not part of this Church of Assisi ecumenism of evolution and charismatic movements. So it was a blessing, he actually said. And it was false. There was no excommunication. We all know that. And many, even Novus Ordo canon lawyers, defended Archbishop Lefebvre at that time.
And there is a silence in the new society. They not speak of some aspect of Bishop Lefebvre, some aspect of his doctrine, of his teaching about this, question, to take distance of the new church.
That's true. That's true. The new SSPX is silent even about our own founder, Archbishop Lefebvre. They won't quote him. They won't reprint his sermons where he condemns clearly Vatican II, speaks of the scandals of the popes. They've all sanitized it now, which is very dangerous for the souls. Number 5, however, some of his successors in the leadership of this congregation, SSPX, have believed that they could do better than their founder. The new leadership of the Neo-SSPX is gradually leading to the assured destruction of this work, Operation Suicide, which was formally founded for the reconstruction of the Catholic Church, Operation Survival. Under the pretext of converting modernist Rome, they have allied themselves with it and are slipping into a real trap. They have received from Rome various permissions and jurisdictions in exchange for a conciliatory attitude, that is, their silence, which constitutes a major compromise. It is not necessary to sign a piece of paper in order to make very serious compromises and enter inside the conciliar structure. It suffices that the facts speak for themselves, which little by little form an authentic and true agreement. According to the ecclesiastical law, the tolerance of certain practical facts by the religious superiors can create with time a real legal status. So basically, when Labarue, St. Peter's, and Campos, Brazil, when they went with Rome, they signed the agreement and then swallowed the new Mass, new sacraments, and Vatican II. With the SSPX, it was done a little more sneaky. They started to accept the new Mass, Vatican II, in so many words, and the new code without distinction, the new profession of faith, and all the new sacraments as legitimately propagated. They accepted all that without the agreement first. But the agreement it's like a silent agreement. And still even now, they have not publicly come out saying there's a signed agreement. But this point is making that, in fact, the agreement is there. Otherwise, why are they getting jurisdictions? Why are they getting all these favors from Pope Francis and the local bishops? So there has to be an agreement. And the next point is quite powerful. It is illegal and unthinkable within the conciliar church to give the right to confer sacraments to those priests who are not incardinated, which means to be taken into a diocese or under a bishop. If the members of the Neo-SSPX have already been granted permission by the conciliar church to give the sacraments, it is because they are clearly already incardinated. If the members of the Neo-SSPX are already incardinated, it is because they are already within the new church, and that strictly, it is no longer necessary to sign any agreement. So if a New York Islander is playing for Boston Bruins, and he's going on the ice with them and practicing with them and playing in their games, he's considered a member of the team, right? And if the society priests are working under these bishops, have jurisdiction for confessions, marriages, and holy orders, and they're obeying these modernist bishops, and even obeying them in the holy days of obligation, like at St. Mary's, and in Los Gatos, California, and in Florida, and probably many more parishes throughout the world, they announced that the Ascension Thursday, the Holy Day of Obligation, is now moved to Sunday because the local bishop has decided this. So if they're playing on their team and they're practicing with their team and skating with the team, they're in the conciliar team. This is a very good point.
Yes.
Any questions so far? All right. 6. Blindness is the fruit of the sin against the Holy Ghost. This is the common denominator of all the congregations and groups that were formerly truly traditional and that have gone backwards and become compromising. It is the fruit of a seriously reckless prudence, so-called prudence, because it obstinately ignores the evidence that certain practical attitudes seriously compromise the faith. All these groups, without exception, gradually tend to accept the entire Second Vatican Council and no longer want to recognize that they have been mistaken. The spiritual blindness is evident. Practical imprudence in the things of faith is a compromise in the things of faith. Now, back in 2012, if you remember, in 2013, this was all the superiors of the Society of St. Pius X, they were always saying this. We have to be prudent. We have to be prudent we have to be prudent in our dealings with Rome. And the prudence just meant compromising on the faith. That's what it meant. So it was a reckless prudence against the faith.
There is the recently interview in internet of Bishop Rifan, and he said because when he go with Rome, he make a compromise with Rome. He say we don't change the tradition. We only want to be su Roma,
Recognized by
Rome, but we don't want to change nothing. And now, 2 weeks ago, maybe he said in an interview that now the new mass is okay. There is no problem in the new mass, and all the documents of the council not have errors. And that is no reason for them to be traditional, because all he accept all the council and the new mass.
Yes, that's a very good point Father just made. For those who didn't catch it in the back, Bishop Rifan down in Campos, Brazil, in 2003, when they made the agreement with Rome, the agreement was you can keep your traditional mass, you're just recognized by Rome, that's all. You'll stay traditional. But it doesn't work that way, and just 2 weeks ago, Father said, he announced that we accept the new mass and we accept Vatican II. So they end up no longer being traditional. And that's the danger of these entering with agreements with Rome. Will stay traditional, but they don't end up staying traditional. They end up swallowing the poison.
How long was it before they finally said that? How much time between we'll keep being traditional and we love the new?
2003 was their agreement, so not long. And Bishop Rifan has concelebrated in the new mass. So.
And she accept all the documents, the Council Vatican II, all the documents.
He accepted all the documents of Vatican II. That's suicide. But that was Campos, the strong diocese under Bishop de Castelmayor. It was a shining light. And once they made that agreement, they were killed. Number 7, page 11, proof of their doctrinal compromise of the neo-SSPX is founded in the documents publicly released in 2012. Among them are the Doctrinal Declaration of April 15, 2012, the General Chapter Statement of July 2012, the 6 conditions for the agreement with Rome, and the interviews with Bishop Follet, Father Pfluger, and etc. The most serious of these is the Doctrinal Declaration, which expresses acceptance of Vatican II's doctrines on religious liberty, ecumenism, and collegiality, as well as accepting the new Mass and sacraments as legitimately promulgated. The new Profession of Faith of 1989, and also the new Code of Canon Law with no distinctions. So if anyone asks you, where's the proof the society has changed? Well, there it is. There's the documents. They're in black and white. Number 8, doctrine influences morals. If there is compromise in doctrine, there will necessarily follow compromise in morals. Ever since the new SSPX has compromised in doctrine, the moral teaching has suffered compromise. As a consequence, an example of this is the weak stand on the eans. Many doctors and nurses revealed their contents as containing matter derived directly from cells of aborted infants, even while still alive. This fact alone condemns any sort of participation in these eans. Lamentably, the new SSPX publicly approved of their use and participation, provided its non-cooperation proved to be a detriment to one's job. 2 crimes are encouraged here. Firstly, the involvement in indirect abortion, and secondly, direct cooperation in the eugenics program, which has been publicly announced by the globalists as an immoral means to reduce the world population. So if you remember when the Superior General, Father Pagliariani, last year gave his talk in Kansas City, he never once mentioned abortion in connection to the poison needle, not once. And it only came up in the questions and answers, and still he skirted the issue. And they should have condemned this policy of the poison needle. They should have condemned it.
Yes, and he say, it's not a question moral, it's question medical. But there are many question medical or question medical, or moral, excuse me. There's
Yes.
many problems medical or question moral too. We can
Right.
separate.
Yeah, Father Peglariani said it was a medical question, so we don't have anything to do with it. But many medical questions are moral questions. Many of them, such as the organ donation of vital organs. That's immoral to take vital organs because they have to kill the person to get it. So morality has a lot to do with medicine. Number 12, the Tuch line. The Tuch line, beware. Archbishop Marcel Lefebvre expressed serious reservations about the validity and licitness of the Tuch line consecrations, especially those linked to Palma de Troya in Spain. His position was to avoid them altogether. There they went so far as to elect their own pretend pope. There are serious reasons to doubt if some of these Tuch lines are even still inside the church. The episcopal consecration of a non-Catholic is one of the several illicit actions taken by Archbishop Tuch. Yes, that was when he consecrated Jean Labarre, a French non-Catholic, as a bishop. That's a huge punishment by the church. Which leaves one to question if he was still in his right mind. Among other works, see Father Clarence Kelly's book, The Sacred and the Profane, for an in-depth study on the question, disregarding the sedevacantist views expressed therein. So that was the tragedy, what happened with Father Pfeiffer, to jump into the Tuch line. Very unfortunate. And it's misleading all these boys. Now they're not sure if they're even priests. Number 12 on the bottom, the problem of the liberal spirit. 1. The liberal spirit is not the same thing as doctrinal liberalism, although it is an emanation of the latter. 2. The new social state generated in the Catholic states 2 centuries ago by the French Revolution, with liberal laws and liberal culture, has given birth to a new generation of schizophrenic Catholics. In a secular state where the truth of the Catholic Church lost its rights at all levels and where all religions and doctrines were put on the same level, the so-called Catholic liberalism was born 2 centuries ago in France. This so-called Catholic liberalism went from promoting peaceful coexistence with the abnormal state of society to accepting it as such. Catholics who have lived since childhood in a liberal society end up seeing the situation as normal. In today's relativistic state of society, Catholics, almost without realizing it, have gradually become relativistic themselves. They no longer fully perceive the fundamental concepts of uniqueness and coherence of truth. This has become in them a spirit, a state of mind, a sensibility, a way of life that has accepted not only the peaceful coexistence with the modern spirit, but even more, believes that the spirit of the gospel or of the church can be reconciled with the world. The liberal spirit is not a doctrinal, but a practical spirit that does not want to understand the doctrinal stability of the concepts of the Catholic faith. So a classic example for us Americans is separation of church and state. We just automatically think it's okay, we automatically think it's all right, and we just get used to hearing it, but it's totally against Catholic doctrine. It is because the liberal spirit has as its foundation a sin against the Holy Ghost, by not wanting to accept completely the evident and fundamental principles of the truth, that it is practically impossible to convert those who have the liberal spirit. Moreover, they are of such a remarkable tenacity and so obstinate that they, the liberals, believe that they have the mission to convert doctrinal Catholics. And this is the extent of their blindness. Those who have the liberal spirit can temporarily adopt the theses of doctrinal Catholicism, but they will not persevere in them because deep down they do not understand them. So that's quite a mouthful there. So Bishop Follet, when he wrote to the three bishops in response to their letter in 2012, he basically said, you have a sedevacantist spirit because you don't want to put ourselves under modernist Rome and be recognized by the conciliar church. So he converted the three other bishops to his liberalism. See?
Yes, sir. Yes, is that...
Okay.
Yes. Sí.
All right. Page 14, number 3. Catholics of liberal spirit have always been in the last 2 centuries a burden for doctrinal Catholics. Those who did not lose sight of what is the true concept. First the natural truth, and then the truth of faith. In the last 2 centuries, the so-called Catholics of liberal spirit, with their worldly concepts of false prudence, have always sabotaged the efforts of doctrinal Catholics and have been the cause of a multitude of defeats of Catholicism. For example, the bishops who betrayed the Cristeros, the bishops who wanted to reconcile the Church with the modern world in the Second Vatican Council, and more recently, Father Schmidberger and Bishop Follet, who believe they can reconcile tradition with the enemies of tradition, etc. It is in this sense that the declarations of Cardinal Ratzinger were made in an interview he gave to the Italian magazine Jesus, when he said, the concern of the men of the Church in the 60s was to reconcile the Church with 2 centuries of liberal culture. It could not be said more clearly. And then page 15, number 4, the plague of the liberal spirit by its natural tendency always and gradually leads to the corruption of what is true Christian prudence and true faith. It is oriented to the proper doctrinal liberalism with which it originally emanated in the 19th century. It is generally believed that the social kingship of Christ, the King, is at present not realizable. So the liberals will say, Christ the King was fine for the Middle Ages, but not now.
And this question, for me, is important, the question of the liberal spirit, but we can make confusion with liberalism, doctrinal liberalism. It's more easy to know a person that is open, he say clear his errors, but the liberal Catholic can be a traditionalist and but don't understand well the fight of tradition, and he are liberal, in spirit liberal, and that's why there is a degradation of the situation of the tradition, because there are some spirit liberal and there is no stable, there is no stability.
So the liberal spirit has killed all these once good and solid Catholic movements. But because of that liberal spirit to compromise, to get along, and to be recognized by the modernist authorities, that liberal spirit put them in a position of compromise, and they've crumbled to the Vatican II and the new Mass. And this has just happened now with Bishop Follet. He used to be strong against recognition from Rome. He used to be strong against compromise with Rome, but in 2012 he flipped. So that's a grave danger, and it's the liberal spirit. Perhaps he always had it, the liberal spirit. So, any other point, Father?
Yes.
Okay, so this is given on the feast of the most precious blood of Jesus. We, the undersigned priests, propose the above text for for the consideration of all those who love the true, one, holy Catholic and Apostolic Church. Father Hugo Ruiz and Father David Hewko. So there it is.
There's questions?
Go ahead.
Oh, okay. Question on with Vatican II and the teaching of collegiality. So I've always heard in terms of magisterium that, and I want to make sure that this is not collegiality, or if it is collegiality, I want to be corrected. That the Pope and the bishops in union with him, is that the magisterium or is that collegiality?
Did you follow? Well, as long as it's clear the Pope is head.
But there's the bishops also in union with him.
Right.
And that's the magisterium.
Which takes place at every true doctrinal council.
Okay, so
That's traditional,
that's
yeah.
traditional. Okay, I was just making sure.
Yes. But the Vatican II invented the new second head of the church, which is bishops and pope, which is a two-headed monster. So yes. That. And in fact, the collegiality strips the pope of his personal authority.
Right.
Because he has to get the approval of the bishops. So, for example, Pope John Paul II, you remember Pope John Paul II? When he gave Holy Communion he always used to give communion in the tongue. But when he came to Canada, the bishops told the people, put out your hands, put out your hands. So he caved in and started putting communion in the hand.
Because of the indole there in Canada.
Yes, and the pressure of the bishops. So
The concept of collegiality is primus inter pares, no? Primus inter pares, but all are the same.
yes.
But the Pope is like a president.
Yeah, the collegiality's father is saying is primus inter pares, the first among equals. So he's just like the captain of the team, and no longer the monarch governing by Christ's authority. Right, not the coach, but one of the team players, yes. Yes.
I have a question about page 4, number 1. Pope Francis is at the same time the head of two churches, the Catholic Church and the Conciliar Church. It is in this that the great deception, the abomination and desolation of the holy place consists. None of us in this room could be members of the Catholic Church in any other sect. How is there an exception for the head of the Catholic Church? Head of the Catholic Church.
Because of his election and his authority. If he's elected as Pope, he sits on the throne of Peter. And because of that, he's head of the Catholic Church, visible head, but he's a bad leader like Caiaphas, so he's putting all his weight behind the Conciliar Church and trying to crush the Catholic Church. But he's still one head over the two churches.
He's the one soul on earth who could continue to be a member of the Catholic Church while not believing the faith.
Well, this is where the Code of Canon Law, the old code, says he has to be proven in a fair trial to be a pertinacious heretic. So, in such a trial, he would be proven to be a heretic. So,
Connected to that point, on the second, we cannot accept Sedevacantism as a solution because it denies a path. I'm sorry, I don't want to read the whole thing because I really can read it, but
right.
It denies a path out of the crisis, and only a truly Catholic Pope in the future will have the authority to do it. Does it present a problem of sort of like waiting on a good combination of judges at the Supreme Court, and then eventually there's a liberal combination, and then there's a good, and the pendulum continues to swing back and forth? How do we ever have a sure rule of faith in the Holy Father?
By tradition. If he goes against tradition and all his predecessors, we know where to stand. We resist him and stay with tradition, which was Archbishop Lefebvre's position. We pray for the Pope, we acknowledge his lawful authority, but he has a right to our disobedience. He has a right to our resistance. And St. Robert Bellarmine said, which the Sedevacantists never quote, they only pick and choose what they want, but St. Robert Bellarmine said, when there's a bad Pope, the healthy members of the church must resist him and wait in God's providence for a good Pope.
You did not say that the fifth opinion is the true one. He has the fact that loses his own.
That's one of his opinions too. He has about 5 opinions that he lists, and that's one of them. But
He made a point to say that the fifth opinion is the true one. Like he presented the other opinions, but the fifth opinion he don't.
well, it's certainly the position Archbishop Lefebvre took.
I'm very sorry.
Yes. It's certainly the position Archbishop Lefebvre took. So, this is about the Sedevacantism. How can the Pope be Pope if he's a heretic? This is the... So,
The Pope, the declaration of the heresy formal is only another Pope that may do that, not us. We don't have the authority to declare the formality of heresy. But we are conscious that Pope Francis say many heresies all days. But we don't have the declaration of the Church that is heretic formal, and that is necessary because when Luther say many heresies, the Church don't declare him heretic. He waits, and there is a moment in when the Church, after some advertences to Luther, he don't want to accept, and after the Church declare the heresy formal of Luther, and there is a Church that can do that, not us. It's not sufficient heresy material. You understand?
so Father is saying that material heresy is not sufficient to declare him a heretic. He has to be proved a formal heretic, which has to be declared by the next Pope, that he's a formal heretic and therefore will be condemned. So, yes.
I think recently the society had one of their series in the podcast saying it was up to the cardinals, the College of Cardinals, that could actually make that statement.
Right. The cardinals can put him on a trial.
Yeah, they can put him on trial.
And if they see he's a formal heretic and pertinacious, still the cardinals cannot depose him because no one's above the authority of the Pope. But they could ask him and say, Holy Father, you've been proven to be a heretic. You oppose all of tradition. Please step down and we can elect a new Pope.
Because otherwise it'd be democracy.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
But that's not been done either. So we have to suffer through this terrible nightmare and hold the faith. So
There is this. You remember this interview that is recently in a video in the channel of the society. There is a priest that make some declarations about evolutionism.
Oh yeah, Father.
Yes, but
Yes.
other thing too.
Father Paul Robinson on evolution. And then when he said that a pope can make a new mass and go against quo primum. Is that what you mean, Father?
Yes.
Yeah. So quo primum is very clear, and the full authority of Pope St. Pius V. No one can change this missal. Quicumque means anyone meeting the Pope. So Father Robinson in an interview said that the Pope can change the Mass in the future. But that goes against quo primum. So will you rather stand with Father Paul Robinson or with St. Pius V? Take your pick. that was a few.
It was about Angelus Press, like the latest on Angelus Press or something like that. And I can't remember the exact title, but yeah, it was something about like the latest with Angelus Press. And it was on the SSPX English news.
It was in the Recusant Easter 2023. The Recusant Easter 2023 has that interview spelled out. Okay, well, it's been an hour and 15 minutes.
Yes.
Any other points, Father?
This is this question of this declaration, and you say that other priests of the society that say that the syllabus is not infallible.
Yes, that's right. So when I was in the Philippines in 2013, I was with Father Pfeiffer, Father Giselle, Father Suelo. This was when the resistance was early. And we visited Father Onada, who was a Japanese society priest and prior of Manila in the Philippines. He was telling us that Pope Benedict declared that the syllabus of errors was no longer infallible. It doesn't meet the infallible criteria, and it's basically an opinion. Which when we heard this, we nearly fell over. Because, the syllabus clearly fulfills all the conditions for infallibility. And Archbishop Lefebvre, you preach this all the time. St. Pius X defended it. So to say that it was not infallible was coming from a society priest it was like hearing a Catholic doctor saying abortion is okay. That's how serious it was. So, the doctrine is collapsing. It's compromising everywhere in the new SSPX. So pray for them. Pray for the priests to wake up and get out of that position of compromise. Yes.
And that you want to write here.
Oh yeah. So I suggested to Father we might need to make one last paragraph in this document, which would just say, what do we do now? We just build for the future the way St. Pius X instructed us, and Archbishop Lefebvre's clear position. Stay with that and build for the future. The large Catholic families, seminaries, monasteries, convents, and rebuild and take over the way the Church has always done. And no matter how small we may be reduced to, we got to keep fighting and building. So that's what I suggested would be the last paragraph, something like that, Father.
Mm-hmm. And for me, I think the spirit liberal have many importance, and that is the reason of many the faiths in the Church, in the story, the Church. For me, all they become more clear, this question.
Yeah, we've talked about this with Father before. How is it happening with all the traditional groups? Remember in the 70s, it was either you're with the Latin Mass or you're with the New Mass. It was clear. And then we have all these Latin Masses that have all compromised with Vatican II. So all this breaking up of the solid Catholic block of tradition is because of the liberal compromises. So St. Peter's went with Rome, and we never expected Bishop Follet to lead the society in with Rome either. We just never expected it. So as long as there's compromise with liberalism and modernism, there will always be that element of the Church that won't compromise. So let's just pray that we stay with that and not crumble, but stay faithful with the help of Our Lady.
And the homilies and the sermons of Father Schmidberger and Bishop Fellet before 2000 are different than today. It is possible to verify that. And there are conferences of Father Schmidberger who say it's very dangerous to have relation with Rome and to make accords with Rome,
Agreement.
is very dangerous. We can do that. And now is the contrary thing. It's another thing.
Everybody follow that? So, Father Schmidberger and Bishop Follet, they used to preach no compromise. We can't put ourselves under modernist Rome, like Archbishop Lefebvre. But now, since 2012, they're preaching a new tune, and they've all grown silent on Vatican II New Mass, and especially attacking the Pope's errors. So they're preaching a new gospel, really, a liberal spirit that won't attack error. So, if I might take an example, imagine a healthy body, if it doesn't have an immune system to attack the virus and bacteria and oncoming diseases, what happens to that body? It gets sick and it will die because the immune system is broken down. So the immune system of the Catholic Church is the anti-liberal battle, the fight against error, and ceaselessly, a continual war against error. And if the immune system of the Church dies, and no fight against liberalism, then it's a dead body. But the Church will never be conquered by the gates of hell. So even if all of us compromise, God will raise up the rocks from the streets. He will raise up these kids to persevere in the faith if we all compromise. So that's the point, is we got to keep a healthy immune system, which is to battle the errors of our time and never compromise. And for us, it's pretty easy. We have the clear stand of Archbishop Lefebvre. He spoke so clear and practical, and it was a gift of God, really. So we have no excuse to go with compromise, no excuse.
And the spirit of fight, the spirit.
The fighting spirit, yes.
Fighting spirit is important today.
It's gone in the new SSPX. It's gone, unfortunately. And if any priest gets too loud in the new SSPX, he's going to be reprimanded. Someone told me that the priors in the priories of the Society of St. Pius X now, the new SSPX, all the priors have to review the sermons of all the priests under him. So some of the priests are old priests that were under Archbishop Lefebvre, and here you got these young priests reviewing their sermons to make sure they're antiseptic. No mention of agreement with Rome, condemning it. No mention of politics. No condemning politicians by name. So it's all become sterilized and very liberal. So what happens to the faithful when they are no longer warned of the errors? They slide with the errors. So it's very, very dangerous.
Yes.
Okay?
Yes, it's okay. Thank you, Father.
Okay.
Thank you, Father.
Oh yeah, thank you, Father, and thank you everybody for persevering. And we'll close with a prayer.
Yes.
In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and the Holy Ghost. Amen. Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou among women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus.
Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners now and at the hour of our death. Amen.
Our Lady, crusher of all heresies. St. Pius X, condemner of modernism. St. James, slayer of Muslims. Should we give a blessing, Father? Benedictio Dei omnipotentis, Patris et Filii et Spiritus Sancti, descendas sobre vos et semper. Amen.